I'm a sales leader coming to you from Chaudron and Sons Farms in Limestone, Tennessee, where Davy Crockett was born, right down the road.
Cool.
So it's not been a straight path at all. I would liken my career path to someone with a yo-yo walking upstairs. So, the path is up, but there are a lot of up and downs as you're flinging that yo yo walking up the stairs. So, if you had asked me as I was leaving the University of Alabama in 1985, how would this go? I would not have had any idea how it was going to go. So, my overall path has been up. Where I got to where I am today is I worked at my father's service station and garage and parts service in Gulf Shores, Alabama as a kid, which was really cool. It taught me how to talk to people. We had everything from governors, senators, to just farmer folk coming in, and it taught me how to talk to people. And I realized because we're a mile north of the Gulf of Mexico, I guess the Gulf of America now, people would go to the beach and they needed watermelons. So at 15, I started buying truckloads of watermelons for $1 a piece, and then I would sell them for $2 a piece. And just, oh, you got air in your tires and your inner tube, don't you need a watermelon? And it taught me how to sell, if you will, and also how to deal with people. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I've always been thrilled to or wanted to be a leader. And that really started playing high school football. And then I wanted to be a leader. But to be a leader, you have to be a doer. You have to be able to do the job that you're now leading. So that's really where how I've evolved from there. Spent a little time in the financial services industry. But after I took a phone call again on a Sunday morning before church with a little old lady wanting to know where her municipal bond payment was, I realized I didn't want to do that anymore. So I transitioned to the environmental space and have been in it since 2000, primarily in the TIC space, testing, inspection, certification. So that's where I am. I've led global teams before and just feel really blessed to have been in a leadership role where my passion to make people better, um, able to get paid for it. It works really well. So building high performing teams and especially focused on high performing cultures is what's helped me get to where I am today.
That's what I love about these conversations is I think pretty much everyone I've talked to has said their journey has been a winding path and no straight shot. And I think that's been such a key takeaway for our audience too.
Absolutely.
And so specifically with those career transitions, what are some of those key takeaways that you've seen?
So first thing is do something that you love. I think that's for people that are able to do that. I think that you're really, really blessed to be able to do that. So first and foremost, seek out things that you love to do and you have a passion for it. So if you do that, it makes work go so much easier. So that's my first thing is do what you love. And I think the other thing is also is to bring a lot of positive energy to what you do. And I don't mean Pollyanna pie in the sky stuff, but really bring positive energy to what you do. That makes your job better. That makes the people around you better. And frankly, it helps you get through the difficult times because they will come. So, I think that's the two main things that I would say is do what you love and bring a lot of positive energy to what you do.
That's really neat. And that's cool because I see that in you even just in the last 15 minutes. It's cool to see you living that.
And it really makes a difference in your life and the lives of the people around you. I think that's the old rising tide lifts all the boats. And, so bring positive energy. And that's not just from me. I mean, there's a coach named Nick Saban who I happen to think a lot of. That's one of the things he said is bring positive energy to what you're doing. It makes you better. It makes the team better. And that's served me well, even before Coach Saban said it.
Cool to see that throughout your life too, I'm sure. And so I know positive energy is probably one of those things, but moving into the team vision and culture. So how do you
Mhm.
evaluate if someone's going to be a good fit for your team?
So, I think that's a great question, and it's certainly not perfect. But I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to hire really good people. It's probably one of my top strengths is if you hire great people, then coach them a little bit, give them the tools they need to succeed, and they will. But the very first thing that you look for, that I look for in hiring someone is cultural fit. You can find people that have the skills that are needed, but if they're not a cultural fit, then you're trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. So first and foremost, I'm looking for a good cultural fit. And when I'm in the hiring mode, I tend to be very collaborative because in the sales organizations I've been part of, we are always in a service to a group that's issuing standards or doing testing, that type of thing. So as a result, we have to all work together real well. So I'm very collaborative in my hiring process. I make sure to get input from the sector leaders and of those particular areas. But then at the end of the day, it's my decision and my neck on the line for making the right hire. So as a result, cultural fit and someone who is it's as important to them for the team to succeed as it is for themselves to succeed. And if that happens, that's when you can really create some magic within a team because when they care just as much about the team success as their individual success, wow, that's when some really cool stuff happens. And that's where culture becomes very, very important to create a high performing culture. If you've got individuals that are purely worried about their success, yeah, that's good. But if they're worried about or concerned and committed to the team success, boy, that's when you really have something. So that's the type of person I'm looking for when I hire. And I had a boss one time call me the Nick Saban of sales recruiting because I can recruit really good salespeople and then just let them do their job, coach them a little bit, help them out, but then and then stay out of their way and do the job. So that's the main thing is cultural fit and alignment within the other stakeholders in the organization.
Totally. You can teach the hard skills. It's a little bit harder to teach the like culture and yeah,
Yeah,
mindset.
absolutely.
You've kind of described that ideal team player,
Mm,
and I'm curious if there's a mistake that you see
mhm,
team members or candidates make, whether they're already on your team or they're
mhm.
in the interviewing process. What
Yeah.
is that mistake, and how do you guide your team to avoid that?
Well, let's be real clear. I have made plenty of mistakes in hiring and as leaders, and you learn. But the first thing I would say is in leading a high performing team, the biggest mistake that leaders make is not correcting toxic behavior, tolerating a toxic person on the team. Because what that does is that tells the rest of the team, well, maybe that person is a high performer, but they're also a class A jerk and undermine other parts of the team. And I think that's the biggest mistake made. I've had two situations in my career where I had a high performing toxic performer. And the first one was fairly early in my career, and I just let it linger and hope it would go away. And guess what? It did. And that was not fair to the whole team. So the next time that came up, I did learn. And even though it was painful, I got rid of the top performer because that was something that was hurting the overall team. And the team's performance went up once I did that. So I would say that's probably the biggest mistake I've made in managing teams. And then to kind of go along those lines, hiring people that are not necessarily the best cultural fit or that maybe are not going to be good team members, but they have, they check all the other boxes. That's a mistake. And I got over that one pretty quickly. But that's the main two things is don't tolerate toxic behavior on the team because the rest of the team sees that and realizes you don't have their back. But if they see you take care of it, they know you have their best interests at heart and the team's at heart. And even when you make tough decisions, they respect that. So that's the two things that I would say from a hiring and leading standpoint.
It's cool to hear that too from your actual story of like, okay, these are mistakes that I've made or I've seen, not just out in the ether, just generally.
The gray hair means something. I probably made more mistakes than most people will make in their careers, but I think it also helps to make sure that you're part of an organization where you don't have fear of making mistakes. And I've certainly got scars from beatings at places that if you did make a mistake, that happened. And I'm really blessed right now to work for an amazing organization, Green Seal, a global profit eco label. I work at a place where we can admit our mistakes or our shortcomings, and it's viewed as, okay, let's get better. And I was just on the phone with our CEO, who's my boss, who's an amazing guy. And I was able to say, hey, you know what? Probably didn't do this as well as I could have. So here's what we're going to do moving forward. And that's a really good place to be in. And so that's the kind of the environment that I try to create in that look, we make mistakes, but we move on. And I'll tell you one story. I had a great boss, a mentor named Randy Francisco at NSF. Randy passed away a few years ago. And I made a terrible mistake. It was involving a global contract, and I misapplied the currency change into the Chinese currency. And it was about a $10,000 mistake on $1 million contract. And I was dreading. And the thing is, we couldn't go back and say, oh, we made a math error. Sorry, Mr. Customer, here's this. I mean, they wouldn't have called for that. So late one Friday afternoon, I walked into Randy's office in Ann Arbor, Michigan, closed the door, and I was just dreading it like crazy. And he goes, you okay? And I said, no, not really. He goes, all right, what happened? So I told him the story. And he sat back for probably 30 seconds, but it seemed like third. And he said, okay, I got two questions. Number one, did you learn anything from this? Yeah, won't make that mistake anymore. And this, he said, well, that's my next question. Will it ever happen again? And I said, no. And he goes, get your butt out of my office and go have a good weekend. And that has stuck with me when people when you create the environment where people can come admit when they made a mistake. And then do you have learnings? Because I felt a lot worse about it than Randy did, and he knew that. But that was a great leadership lesson to me because that's how you handle it. You don't beat them up. You're like, okay, two things here. Now, if it had happened again, there would have been pretty severe consequences, but it didn't happen again. But that just has stuck with me ever since as a really good way to create a great culture and to help people in their development. That's probably one of the best stories that I have about my dear friend Randy Francisco up in Michigan. Just a great man and a great leader.
Coming back to the team, it really matters who you're hiring, who's on your team. And I know you mentioned in your email that you had someone who was really this A player. So if you want to tell me about them
Yeah.
and how they've made that impact on you.
I absolutely do. So probably one of the favorite people I've ever worked with, and I've worked with some great people, but probably the best salesperson I've ever worked with is a guy from Staten Island named Rich Prignoli. And he is as Italian as it sounds, just a wonderful guy. And I inherited him when I took over the team for life and health sciences at Underwriters Laboratories. And Rich was a B player. He would admit that. He was usually just at or just below target. So going into 2020, which we didn't know COVID, right, was coming, we had a kickoff sales meeting in Austin. During that meeting, we did a lot of different things, but we ended it with what I call the commitment workshop. In other words, we went around the table and told the team what we appreciated about them. And then we all, no kidding, committed to each other's success and the team success. And Rich really took that to heart and he got after it. He had a quota of just over $3 million. And in 2020, he did $10 million in
Wow.
sales. Top salesperson for UL in that area in the world. But the thing that was so great about Rich, though, is it wasn't just him operating in a silo. He was a great team member. So, for example, we had an online, a quote tool that was Excel that was kind of clunky and hard to use. I wasn't very good at it. Rich was the best at it. And he helped everyone on the sales team do their quotes that were complex in the spreadsheet, didn't want any credit, didn't, just helped them. So not only did he perform extremely well, he was an amazing team member. And he now is in the role that I had when I was there, leading the sales of life and health sciences at UL in North America. So it was the greatest single year of performance I have ever seen, but he did it humbly, graciously. And to this day, he's a dear friend. We text barbecue pictures back and forth. He'll send me pictures of spaghetti sauce and I'll send him pictures of ribs. And he's a good man. He's a good husband. He's a good father. He's a good teammate. I think he exemplifies excellence in everything he does. And it's in my career, it's the single best year of performance I have ever seen and probably will ever see. So shout out to Rich Prignoli out there on Staten Island because he is the epitome of an A player. And he demonstrated some really good trust in me. So when I inherited Rich, he actually came in and we met at a lab up in New York one day. And he said, hey, I'm going to go to work for another division within UL. And I didn't know him and stuff. And I said, okay, if you want to leave, I'll help support you. No problem. But I said, but before you go, let's talk about our vision for you. I said, I've got a vision for you. And here's where I see where you are. And here's where I see you going with what we're going to implement within this organization. And I was like the sixth sales manager in 8 years. So it was like, just go and come. And he bought into it. And he came back the next day. He said, I want to be part of this. And that was mid 2019. So fast forward to 2020, he really started getting it. So just, credit to him, high integrity, high work ethic, really good guy. And it's one of the highlights of my career to see him perform so exceedingly well and do it with such positive energy and helping the team at the same time. So just really, I've had a lot of great performers that I've been blessed to work with, but he's very, very high on the list of those.
It's cool to see that an A player takes both someone who's really like passionate and really good at like what they're doing and good leadership who can see that and guide that too. And that's kudos to you to see that and to create that plan.
And he's one of the unusual people that, a lot of times if you're really good in sales, that doesn't necessarily translate into being a good sales leader. Or frankly, if you're a really good plumber, does that translate into suddenly you're the manager of all the plumbers? Maybe, maybe not. And Rich did that. And I was a decent salesperson. I like to think I'm a better leader than that because I've carried a bag, right? I've done those jobs, but Rich is probably better than me in both of those. And hats off to him.
Well, that's a great highlight. So you've had to hire a lot of people. I know we talked about that a little bit about what a good fit looks like, but what are some challenges that you faced, whether it's hiring or leading, and how have you overcome those?
So a lot of times in hiring, you're pushed to make quick hires, especially in sales, because salespeople are easy to hire. I've had multiple CEOs say, "I'm going to put a number on them. It's easy. Hire me salespeople." It's not that simple. So I think John Wooden, the coach at UCLA, once said, "Hurry but don't rush." So I think that's what you have to do. Operate on your so I think the challenges that you have is you've got to stand your ground to make the right choice instead of the quick choice. And I've certainly made mistakes there, but as I've gone through it, if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. So take your time and hire the right person. I think that's the first thing. And then again, from a leadership standpoint, what I mentioned earlier about don't tolerate toxic behavior on a team. And frankly, don't accept toxic behavior at an organization. I mean, from one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in my career is not leading when situations turn toxic. I'm an eternal optimist, right? We'll work through this. But when things get toxic, sometimes it's best to leave. The days I was talking to a friend of mine this morning in South Alabama that I played high school football with, and he's been with Vulcan Materials in Foley, Alabama for 31 years. That just doesn't happen anymore. And so apparently it never got toxic for him. But if the situation's toxic now, life is too short. It's not worth it because it spills over into your personal lives and your relationships as a husband and a spouse and a father and a grandfather and friend. It's just, trust me, it's just not worth it. That's the three things that come to mind on that.
So then looking at these people who are either looking to level up in their careers or looking for a new job, what is one piece of advice you would give them?
I think the first thing is just go for it and do something to stand out. Even in the application process. So let me give you an example. About a year and a half ago, we had an open BDR position here at Greensill, and we put it on LinkedIn. We, posted it in Indeed. We did, put it all over the place. And we had over 250 applicants, and I reviewed every single one of them in our candidate profile and stuff. But of those 250, less than 20 wrote a cover letter. Now, I'm old school. Maybe that's not even how it works anymore, but the cover letter got my attention because it was now, not all of them were very good, but the ones that took the time to do a cover letter instead of just hitting send on the resume and then tied what the job requirements were to their particular skills got my attention. Now, I interviewed people that didn't do a cover letter and people who did. Ultimately, I hired someone who had done a cover letter, but who was also a referral from someone I had worked with before. So, one, go for it, do something to stand out, and network, network, network. The best jobs that I have gotten in my career were jobs that some of them weren't even posted because you worked through your networks. Do something to stand out and then use your network aggressively. People want to help. I mean, if you look, LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. But again, the best jobs I've ever had I don't think were even posted. It was when networking put me in front of it. So that's what I would suggest to those out there. It's certainly a lot different. And though in the days of AI, and we're trying to figure out how to use AI in our organization now, I still think there is room for personality and for individual effort to tie what the job is to what your particular skill sets are. And that makes somebody stand out. And if you'll indulge me, let me tell another story. I got one resume and a cover letter from a lady in Birmingham who was nowhere near qualified. I mean, she didn't have any business applying for the job. But I looked at her resume, and what stood out for me is that she went to the University of Alabama, my beloved alma mater. So her resume was awful. I mean, maybe the worst I had ever seen, but she'd had the effort to do this. So you know what I did? I sent her a note. I said, hey, ignore this if you want to, but you're not qualified for this job. But I look at a lot of resumes and yours is bad. So here are a couple of suggestions on your resume. And so got a note back from her on LinkedIn pretty quickly. She sent me a couple of drafts of her resume. I looked it over and it went from being really bad to really good. Credit to this really bright young lady. And about 2 months later, I get a note on LinkedIn on Friday night, a LinkedIn message. And she said, I just want to thank you and your wife, because my wife was involved in this some too. I want to thank you because I got like 3 job offers with the new resume. So, that to me is trying to, give back a little bit. She had no business applying for the job. And I'll be honest, if it hadn't been University of Alabama, I probably wouldn't have done that. But I had a feeling because her education was better than that. And just a little bit of help, and she went out and got multiple job offers. And I still hear from this young lady in
Aw.
Birmingham, and it's just really really cool. So I think that's where have a passion for or make yourself different, stand out from the crowd. But then when you're on the other side of the table, give back,
Hmm.
right? I mean, help people. And, I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I say that hopefully somebody would take that as an example. I probably spent 10 minutes in doing that. And again, we were sitting at date night on a Friday night when I got the message in, and I read it to my bride, and it was just really cool. So just do something to make the lives better of the people that you work with, to help them stand out a little bit. And that's what we try to do. So I know that wasn't exactly tied to the question, but I think it does tie into take a little time and make yourself stand out.
It really is all about the relationship and how are we caring for others, and whether that's on the side of a job seeker looking to stand out, or from someone who can offer a hand to help too. I have 2 more questions, and specifically for you all at Green Seal, is there anything that someone should know if they're going in to interview with your company?
Do your homework. Coach Bear Bryant said prior preparation prevents poor performance. Come in prepared, because someone interviewing for a job should interview the company just as much as the company interviews them to see if it's the right. So come in really well prepared. To give you an example, and this is something I did, but when I interviewed with Doug Gallen, our CEO, November of 2023, I had gone in and reviewed the Form 990, which is the not-for-profit tax returns, for 5 years. I knew exactly what their revenue was. I saw some spikes, I saw some other things, and really understood them. And I had also gone to the website, and I saw where they said, fill out this quote request form and we'll get back to you within 2 to 3 days. And I told him, I said, does it really take 2 or 3 days to get back to someone? He goes, yeah, no, it kind of drives me crazy. What would you do? I said, 2 hours. If I get this job, I'm 2 hours. It's going to be 2 hours. So go in, do your homework, do the preparation, understand as much as you can about the company, and then ask good questions. That to me is so when somebody's looking at Green Seal, they need to understand that we're a mission driven organization. They need to understand that we're a not for profit. But as my boss, the CEO, says, we don't have a problem with it because it helps keep our doors open and allows us to reach our mission. But understand about the company. We're not for everybody. If you don't want to be part of a mission-driven organization, or if you've got to own stock in the company that you're working for, we're not for you. But do your homework, be it here or anywhere else, to see if it is a fit. And you can't determine that until you've done your homework. And then the other piece is you should be getting your best foot forward from the company that's interviewing you. So if it doesn't pass the smell test and something's wrong, run. because they're giving you their best foot forward. If it doesn't smell right or feel right at that point, run. It's not worth it. So, do your homework, be prepared, but also interview them just as hard as they interview you and understand if it's the right cultural fit. I know that I have chased title and money before in my career, and almost every time it's been a mistake. And once I quit worrying about that, then guess what? The titles and the money came.
Mm.
So just, interview for the right fit that matches your heart. I'm a devout conservationalist from Teddy Roosevelt, right? He started the national parks, and our mission here is about environmental and sustainability. So it goes to my heart and my core values. So, but I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't researched it a little bit. So that's my advice: is just be prepared and go in, with an open mind and open heart, and listen and learn.
Last question I have is looking forward to the future. So,
Mhm.
what is one skill or trait that you think will be essential for success moving forward?
That is such a great question. I probably struggle with it more than anything else because it would be easy to say AI or that type of thing. But again, I'm going to go a little old school on you. For me, it's two things. The first thing is be a good communicator. And that's why I think a liberal arts education still makes a lot of sense because it teaches you to think, it teaches you to write, it teaches you to process information. So that's the first thing. Be a really good communicator. And then something I've kind of said a couple of times here is bring positive energy. I think that's lost in these days of working remote, and I work remote. Our team works remote, but I think you kind of lose that ability. So again, be a good communicator and just exude positive energy and just be a good team member remotely. Care about your coworkers, care about your team. And I think that's a huge differentiator. And no matter what happens with technology, I think those are skills that are always going to be in demand. And I'll go to my grave leaving that because those are important skills and will differentiate people from the crowd.